So I've said most of what I need to say about Meghan and Harry and Meghan, the new Netflix series. Great stuff. This is my review on episode 3. Great stuff. So I finished off in the last episode talking about Prince Harry dismantling white supremacy from within. And I love that in episode 3, they did a little dive into, first of all, no stone was left unturned. Is that the right saying? No stone. Yes, that's exactly the saying. No stone was left unturned. In this docuseries, they covered every aspect that I thought that was necessary to cover of their experience from the media, from inception, since Meghan came out, as well as talking about Prince Harry's life. There are so many moments in there that, even as, me, I grew up in the UK, I watched all of this, like from Diana's death. I watched that on TV from when Harry, wore the Nazi suit, all the stuff that happened in his life. We've all witnessed that. I'm sure some of it came over to America, but we witnessed a lot of Harry's life. And they did a good job telling the full story, all the components of the story his story. And because it was so relatable, because we've all sort of seen it in the tabloids, and it was like, finally he gets to give his point of view of all those monumental tabloid stories that has happened throughout his life. That's kind of what this docuseries has been about throughout his life and hers too, whilst also introducing us to the love of his life, telling us, look, I love her, this is why I love her, showcasing his love for her, and you guys can love her or not, I don't care. She's the mother of my 2 children, I don't care. She's mine. So that's what we saw. But one thing that I found so important, and this is why this story is so important to me, is how they are dismantling white supremacy from within. Having an ally as a royal, Prince Harry, is sort of like the biggest FU, the biggest revenge to the craftsmen, to the masters, to the builders, to the sustainers of white supremacy. And I think this on its own is what boils the blood of the British media, especially the tabloids. As they said in the documentary, 3% of the UK is black, 0.2% of them are in the British media. So this is a white media, white-run media. In America, you're going to have a higher population of people in the media that are black and mixed race and colored and all sorts. But in the UK, not so much. And they have had the opportunity to push their racist agenda. And I just love how Harry, in this documentary, Meghan and Harry, are giving us a history of white supremacy, but they're giving us a history of the British colonial past. And this is one of a very big issue that a lot of people have with the royals, their racist history. And for the royals to continue to exist in the modern era, they cannot deny their racist history. They have to accept the history, acknowledge the acceptance. That's the most important thing. Acknowledge the racist history and try and rectify it. But the difference between Harry and William, and the reason why the public loves Harry over William, why Harry is winning in the popularity contest over William, is because Harry is an outlier. Harry is authentic to himself, and William is a slave to the system that is churning out words, that reading off of a script written by his press office to convince us to keep the structures, the pinnacles of white supremacy, while Harry unintentionally, by marrying a black or mixed race woman, by eloping, they didn't elope, leaving to the US, running away to the US, living out their lives, creating a Netflix documentary all the things that he's doing, which is taboo, all the things that he's doing that is terrible to the media, it's dismantling white supremacy. And he may not know this, but what he's doing is either completely dismantling the royal family, or it's enhancing it. It's making it more tolerable and acceptable to the Commonwealth. Because when you think about all the countries that want to leave the Commonwealth, from Australia to Jamaica to every Caribbean island, Barbados left. When you think about all of these countries that are leaving, well, Harry and Meghan and Harry are very compelling to them. And if only the royals employed some of the tactics used by Meghan and Harry and their US media team, which is more skilled than their UK press office, let's be real. If they use some of these compelling storytelling mechanisms, they would realize that they could win over the public, the global public, much better. And to the Piers Morgans of the world that say ignorant stuff like they've become reality stars, I said this in my last video, let's not forget that the Queen herself was one of the first reality TV stars ever, because she had a reality TV show in Buckingham Palace. Let me Google it, show you guys. The Queen Elizabeth II reality show. It came out in the 70s. Yeah. It was a documentary. It was a reality TV show that covered her life, showcased her life. Let me show you guys. Let me show you there. In the 60s. In 1969, the Windsors commissioned, they are the ones that funded this, a 105-minute documentary titled The Royal Family. It was aired on BBC on June 21st, 1969, and then on ITV the following week, as viewers watched a never-before-seen side of the strong family unit. And we watched their daily lives. So anyone that's calling Prince Harry a reality TV star and he's and thinking as though British aristocracy are too big to be in reality television, let's remember one of the first ever reality TV stars was Queen Elizabeth herself. And this was how they tried to appeal to the British public, but apparently it was boring and it didn't do too well. And that's why they had to cancel it or whatever. Well, it was a documentary, but it didn't do too well. It was too revealing. Whatever the case is, don't act. So I just feel like some people are just such snobs. I just find in the world, something I've noticed about people that are snobs, because I used to be a snob. Sometimes some people say I'm still kind of snobbish sometimes. Thing about snobs, so I'm a snob, so I know what I'm saying. Or people that are their nose is so high up and they just think they're too good for anything and everything. They're too above everything and anything. And they just kind of what's the word? I don't know the word, but they kind of just wallow in their ignorance. And just kind of or indulge in their ignorance and just think they're too good because they don't really know the history. They don't know anything. It's ignorance. So if we talk about this, the Queen is the first person to have a reality TV show before even the Kardashians about her life. Then Diana exposed the royal family in that Panorama interview, even Harry said this in this documentary, even though the means at which they got that information was fraudulent, what she spoke was her truth and her experience. And so She's exposed the royal family before. So why are people so shocked that Harry would do this, expose the royal family for his survival, for the survival of his children and his wife, when what's his name, King Charles said, we're not get out, we're not funding you anymore, go, just simply because his kids were black? What do you think Harry's gonna do? And yeah, he got $100 million. I think he should have gotten more. He got that good business. He knows how to survive. Get richer. Great. And people like, it's always like poor. Okay. What's his name is not poor. Piers Morgan. But it's always like people with no business acumen that will complain about somebody making $100 million. I know Piers Morgan is worth like 20 million, but he seems to be talent, not business. And anyone that has business acumen understands that if you're smart enough to broker a deal that you get $100 million, why is that a problem? If anything, you should admire that. Anyway, let me keep going. Where was I? So fantastic. Dismantling white supremacy. Fantastic. They talk about, in the documentary, they talk about how the British hid their racism, which is what they still do today. When you have people like Piers Morgan and others in the media gaslighting the existence of British racism. This is not a channel that I talk about racism, but I have a documentary called The Great Divide. Go watch that. And I break down the history of white supremacy, how it was built, and all of that. The Great Divide, I'll put a link to it down below. And so it's so crazy to me when people continue. This is the biggest gift of white supremacy, the idea that they're able to consistently gaslight its existence. So now people are just saying, oh, they're saying, just get over slavery, get over the past. You know, this is what our ancestors did. This is not our fault. And don't ask for reparations, don't you dare, and just get over it and let's move on. Yeah, because you get to benefit off of white supremacy every single day. And people like Meghan, who's like, let's be real, I'm sorry, in Nigeria we don't consider her black, but who's like mixed race that looks like a white person, gets to be treated like she's the N-word in the UK because she's not white enough for you guys. That's what white supremacy looks like. Anyway, slave trade in the Caribbean. Yeah, so they talk about how the British consistently hide their slavery. They hid the slave trade in the Caribbean. And I love how in this story they didn't ignore the slave story. And this is how Harry was smart enough, or I should say, she's definitely part of this. Meghan too. Meghan and Harry were smart enough to dismantle white supremacy from within. They talk about the relationship. I talked about this in my other video. What, you know, the dicey relationship between the royals and their press units. It's kind of like just the press, just obsessive stalking. The royal experts. I like that little segment when they talked about what is a royal expert or what is a royal correspondent. But I think that Harry kind of threw a little jab at royal correspondents, like said anybody could be a royal correspondent or whatever. And I don't think that's true. These are people like in an office that their department focuses on, or them specifically. They are paid to be well researched, well informed on the royal family, and then concoct stories. Now, the integrity of the royal correspondent will depend on the publication. So, like CNN having a royal correspondent is probably going to be somebody that is well read, well informed, and all those things. But a royal correspondent in a tabloid, I mean, it's a tabloid, so obviously they're not going to be that credible. But the idea of a royal correspondent, it's kind of like a White House correspondent. You have access to the royal family, from the more prestigious papers and publications. They're going to have access their press, stuff, and they just have access. So he kind of made it seem like anybody could do that. It's not a serious role, but it actually is, depending on the publication. So there we go. And you have people that have been documenting the royal family for decades, so they really have a deep dive or deep information about the royal family and are equipped to be royal correspondents. This is my I am a journalist. I have worked in news organizations, so this is what I'm telling you based on being a journalist. Yeah, so for me, that I talked about this, the whole stuff. So let's move on to the next one. So this is the part that I wanted to break down in this video, and it was like Meghan's relationship with her half siblings. And I think why it was so important for Meghan in this documentary to disown or disclaim her siblings. Like I said, in this, no stone was left unturned. And it was important for her to just sort of pronounce the fact that she doesn't know these people. These people are strangers. And I think it was so funny how they went on Piers Morgan. The brother went on Piers Morgan talking smack about her. And to me, them being 17 years older than her, them being half siblings, it's very believable that she doesn't know them. This is a normal thing. People don't know their half siblings like that. Unless you guys grew up together, chances are you guys have different cultures. I talk about this. I go watch my videos on the Kenim O show where I talk about specifically men that over procreate, and I talk about how these kids have nothing to do with each other. These kids have different cultures because they didn't grow up in the same household. Even if you even know them, you guys are not going to be aligned. You guys are not going to have loyalties to each other. You guys are not going to have all those things that true siblings, true-blooded siblings that grew up together have. Then this age gap is so huge. So to me, just as someone that understands like half siblings, people just don't know their half siblings like that most of the time. And even if they do know them, they're just typically not that close to them. Typically, unless like you share the same mother. When you share a father, typically with a half sibling, you're just not going to be that close. And go watch my other videos where I break this down. But it's very believable to me that she doesn't know these people. And I talked about it in one of my videos. I was basically saying that, like, imagine, this is why it's so annoying when men over procreate, and they have these kids with multiple different baby mamas. It's a problem because what happens then is, what if one of the kids turns out to be the next Jeffrey Dahmer or something, and then I don't know this stranger, but now I have to be associated with this like serial killer, someone that I don't know, someone that I have no connection with. Like, it's crazy. So that's why I just feel like men need to do better jobs at like family planning and not sort of like spreading their seed in different households. Because unfortunately for Meghan, I mean, she's kind of lucky that her sister didn't come out to be a serial killer, but these people are obviously desperate and thirsty for money, and they're coming out with these, ridiculous stories. But they did a very good job in this documentary discrediting them, talking about how even Meghan's mom was offered money to expose her, and all these people are being offered money, and Meghan's mom was loyal, and how her dad was disloyal, so they painted him in a bad light, and how her siblings were obviously desperate. She doesn't even address them because she's like, I don't know them. Who are they? Which I don't blame them. If she doesn't know them, she doesn't know them. And why do people think it's not believable? I just think another thing what was so funny is like, she said that at some point in the documentary that people really wanted it to be, people were surprised that it was that side of her family. Like basically, and Wendy said this, it was the white side of her family that were acting crazy, not the black side, which is so funny and typical, but not what the media wants you to think. Anyway, all in all, there was a lot of virtue signaling. I talk about this for both of them, whether it was Harry joining the military or Meghan like being whatever, an activist and doing all her stuff and being, there was a lot of virtue signaling, But it was, to them, it was important. It was an important tactic to use to tell their stories in a compelling way and get us to understand who they really are. Because at the end of the day, this is their truth, and that's what they're telling. Another interesting thing was the fact that she Googled etiquette classes. I thought that was very funny and interesting, because this is a question I think a lot of people wanted to know. And I loved how real and compelling that was, because that's what you would do. So why do you think that Meghan is any different from any of us? Why wouldn't she Google it? It was just really compelling that she did that. That's how she found out. There was no Princess Diary for her. Ooh, this is an important part, and I almost forgot to talk about it. The fact that Meghan Markle is an actress. This is really important. She's an actress, and the thing about actresses is that they adapt. They embody new characters, and it's almost like she was fully trained for this position as an actor, because she's embodying this character, this eloquent, prestigious, aristocrat, not just aristocrat, princess in the public. This is what she did for a living, and it was almost the training that she needed to go out into the royal family, even from the way, the idiosyncrasies of just the way, the subtle ways, when she talked about the subtle waves, the way that she speaks, because even within an American accent, there are words that she uses that are very British. Like when she says stuff like, it's quite interesting, that's a very British thing, or it's sort of blah, blah, blah. She has this way of, adapting a lot of the British language into her American accent, but also subtly shifting her accent very subtly to a more aristocratic American sounding accent, almost similar to what you see in the Gilded Age back in those days, right? She's just sort of doing sort of the upper echelon of American accents in association with the British accent, which is interesting. I'm sure she must have read books about King Edward VI's wife. I'm sure she's just figured out how to adapt all of that stuff. So that was interesting. And to me, she's an actress, so of course she's playing a role, and it just shows how she was really perfect for him. If this is how my interpretation of it, go watch the other episodes where I break this down in more depth. But I just want to conclude by saying she was perfect for him, like he said, in so many ways, that she could embody not only the role of playing the part in public, but she also mirrored him. She mirrored him in private, with being an activist, being all these things, having the same interests as him. When you talk about a soulmate, and a soulmate is somebody that is aligned with your purpose, and you guys are come together to fulfill each other's purposes, she really is that person. And people really just don't want her to be that person. And that's where the conflict is in the public, especially the British media. They don't want her to be that person, but Meghan just really is that person. And it's when somebody is the right person for you, because I don't believe that everybody gets a soulmate, but when you do get one, first of all, you have to be in alignment with your purpose to find your soulmate. You got to do all those things. But when you do get one, and it's this perfect, that every little detail about her fits perfectly into his world, even from the activism to the same passions and all these things, to the fact that she's an actress and can play the role that he needed someone to play when in public. Come on. If this is not the perfect situation, I don't know what is. All right, so let me just wrap things up here. So their story is so interesting. And I think I said this already, but I'll say it again, that what the royals don't realize is this is exactly what is needed to modernize them and to keep them relevant, seeing their personality and humanity This is what we want from the royals, and this is not what they're giving us. But it's so funny that we see that in Harry and Meghan. And in a way, they are these icons that we never get to know. Because in the past, okay, so I just want to say, gone are the days of the Michael Jackson superstar. Gone are the days of these kings and queens living in their high horses or whatever, living in their high towers. They are elusive and we don't know anything about them. And we still look at them as gods on earth and worship them or whatever. Gone are those days of idols. In this era, we need to know your personality. We need to know you, and you have to be compelling to us. And I know that people like Piers Morgan are coming for William and Harry. Not William and Harry. Harry and Kate. William and Kate. Harry and Meghan. Jesus. Okay, so Piers Morgan is coming for Harry and Meghan for stealing William and Kate's shine. But if William and Kate want to be admired by the public, just lean in. Give us more of your personality. Now, I'm not saying go and create a reality TV show, but think about what, leading up to the coronation, give us something. If the Queen could be the first reality TV star, you can give us something. And I don't want them to do it in a way that they're sort of competing with Meghan and Harry, but in a sophisticated way. Give us maybe wait a couple years so this kind of dies down, and then give us an inside look of the royal family and why we should be compelled to be interested in you guys. And that's what you need to do in this modern era if you want to be compelling, if you want to be relevant, if you want us to care. Because right now, we don't care about William and Kate. They're boring. No one cares. But we do care about Harry and Meghan. And this is why I think it probably just irks William, because when I think about The Crown and how in The Crown, as Charles was so, in his character in The Crown was so obsessed with being the one with the spotlight and hated anyone taking his light, and he hated the fact that Diana stole his spotlight. And I wonder if William is anything like that, because he's the first son, he's the heir, and all his life they've told him he's great, they told him that he's the king, he's preparing for this role as king, even though he kind of seems like it's such a burden and he hates it. Low-key, he kind of seems like that. But I wonder if there's any part of him that's a little bit jealous that William and Harry are taking his shine. But ultimately, it doesn't really matter, because you're going to be king and we'll care about you back if you become king at this rate. Let me just finish this off. Anyway, so this is what it is. These are my thoughts. Very, very good stuff. Let me know your thoughts. Leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, all the above. My name is Kenim, and I'll see you next time. A peace.